What's up, y'all? Happy 2017. I haven't seen a couple of y'all yet. Some of y'all I have. I know I haven't done a video in a while, and I know some folks were like, yo, I haven't seen a video. So, this is my attempt in the new year to kind of get back to that. Um, I'm thinking a lot right now, actually, about my ancestry DNA results, right? I just announced that I got them right, and that 72% of them says that I'm from Africa. And obviously, I have African ancestry. Like my skin tone is the biggest that giveaway, right? But it's interesting that I got my results this weekend because I was just doing a dance intensive with Moving Other People Dance Company, and it's been a long time since I've dedicated this much time to dance. And the reason is that I'm thinking about my ancestry and dance is because of this other big concept and like issue that I've also been having with perfection. And I recognize that the struggle with perfection that I've had is definitely rooted in being a woman in a black body. Like society's ideas of what perfection is are everything that is not black, right? You talk about purity and whiteness and, these constructs, these real tight constructs, you know, um, like not a lot of hip movement, right? If you're talking about dance, like straight, erect posture, like no room for like variations and like things that are not planned, spontaneity. And I also think about what are the things that have been imposed on people of the African diaspora that have, for better or for worse, have informed the ways in which we think about ourselves and our relationship to each other and our relation to the world. Um, I was raised Catholic, and as I've started my healing journey around, like, why am I so rigid sometimes in my thought and even in the way I move, my opinion on myself and like how I feel about myself, and always like feeling like there's this internal judge that wants me to be perfect, right? That I can't mess up, I can't be a fuck up, I can't be all of these things. And I realized that some of those ideas, like I was saying, come from being black, and then the things that being a woman of the African diaspora, what are the things that were imposed on me? One of them being religion. And disclaimer, or I guess preface what I'm going to say by saying that there's nothing wrong with believing in God. Actually, I believe in God. Most of the people I know believe in God. I don't take that away from nobody. We all need something to believe in and a greater power that connects us to something bigger than ourselves. It's when the dogma and the doctrine of a religion starts to restrict and limits people's ability to be infinite amount of possibilities. And so is the same with Catholicism. The thing with Catholicism that really affected me was these ideas around purity and with purity being perfect. And so from a young age, I was always very obsessed with being a good person and not messing up and being good, being pure. And things in my life that have happened to me made me feel like I was not pure, right? Not just my blackness, but also around sexuality and around body movement, right? Things that were inherent to my black body already were deemed as impure. So for a long time, I felt like there was this stain that I couldn't get off of me, that being just my innate self. And as I started to develop and change as a woman and become more and more embodied in my sexuality, I started to bump up against these ideas of chastity and purity. Like there was cognitive dissonance. There's this body soul part of me that wanted to move and be sensual, and then my mind was with all these ideas of like you must be um still and rigid and women, people don't move like that. That's impure as a woman for you to move that way. I started to recognize little by little in my 20s this idea of how perfection was limiting me, right? I also noticed it in my writing. As a writer, I've always felt like writing was my sanctuary. That's where I could express myself and let things flow, though, however they wanted to flow, right? But then as I started to getting into like editing and in school editing and like perfection and like like what is a sentence structure or what makes sense, schematics and grammar, I started to become really obsessed with structure and not content. So now in my life, I recognize that my desire to be perfect makes me mess up more than if I just let myself be human. And being human is the great experiment. It is the greatest experiment of our lives. I know that I can't be society's idea of perfect because I'm already God's perfection, right? All of us are God's perfection. And if you watch or you just look at nature, the nature outside of ourselves, if you look at the way a tree grows, grass, you don't really ever question the knobs and the knots and like the crevices in a tree or in the mountains or like grass. You don't compare, make sure that the grass is all the same height, right? So all of that is perfect. We don't question it. A lot of us don't question the structure of a tree. And as much time as I've spent like studying facial structure and studying the way people walk and recognizing that some people have one eye is bigger than the other, one breast is bigger than the other, one arm is longer than the other, right? These are these innate imperfections or asymmetry that is perfect in its design. This is why I love dance, because for me, dancing helps me to break free of that captivity of the mind, of these ideas that don't let me be human. And I recognize how important it is to move my body, to let it stumble, to let it flow into whatever rhythm it's feeling instead of trying to force it into something. I think that that's where a lot of my anxiety has stemmed from this idea of wanting to be that which I cannot be, instead of being who I am and being what I am. So this weekend and has really made me understand to like just live and be present in the moment and be present in myself. And that the moment is perfect as it is, that it can't be any more of what it is. It can't be any more different than what it was already intended to be. I think that if I remember that I am perfectly made in the way that I am, that I don't need to change anything on my body, that it's okay to have blemishes on my face. It's okay to have a pimple, Matter of fact, pimples and stuff like that give you a message about your health, but that's a whole other topic. I feel more liberated. And I think liberation is a daily practice. It's a practice that I constantly have to undo all the programming and things that I've been told that I have to be or that I can't be because I'm a Black woman. Receiving my results, has further affirmed that. And the story for me behind my skin tone and behind my dancing is that of liberation and rebelling, right? As a Black woman, I carry the history of people who were enslaved, and they were restricted, and they were stripped from all of their outer manifestations of culture, and then slowly stripped and molded into what these European ideas of what it meant. So I was taken from the center, from the place in the universe that our ancestral cultures and religions placed us and put into a white man's idea of what the universe is, where I'm just a satellite, right, orbiting around Eurocentric ideas. In that, right, what was seen as part of my culture, dance and movement and hip gyration, right? And connecting to the earth and getting dirty and really like being one with my nature. In this new world that was created by colonization, that all of that became unnatural. It became dirty, lewd, too sexy, too sexual, right? And so, in proclaiming that, yes, I am from the African diaspora, first, obviously from skin tone, and now that I'm exploring my DNA and exploring all of these different cultures that make up who I am, I'm rebelling against this idea that I gotta be this perfect, like rigid, uh, whiteness. Not that there's anything wrong with being light skinned, because there are some of our brothers and sisters who are light skinned. That doesn't remove their validity as a black person or a person of the African diaspora. But whiteness, the idea and the concept of whiteness, and everything that comes with that, and patriarchy, it's a disconnection from the earth and disconnection from self, where you live up here and you ignore all of this because you've been told that this is impure and imperfect. And I think that the effects of also trauma, particularly like sexual trauma, can have those effects where you start to disconnect from your body. And I think um the body is such a great place for transformation, because transformation in the body is constantly happening. Like cells are dying and cells are being born, and like the heart is beating, and then it takes a pause, and then it beats, and then it transforms, and like it changes, like blood goes from deoxygenated to oxygenated, and like all of these things are happening, the constant transformation. And so if we, or myself, understand how perfect even just the mechanisms of the way that we walk and the way that we process, the way that we grow babies, the way that we digest food, and all of the ways that we've been built, right? And then coupled with the way that culture, black culture and Latino culture, and all of these cultures that have been melded together and welded together to create what we know. Like, how perfect are these things, you know? So yeah, that's where I'm at. That was a little bit all over the place, but whatever. I just wanted to share some of what I'm thinking about that. And I encourage any of y'all, if y'all feel like dancing as a way to like deconstruct the stronghold that your mind has on you, I encourage that. Because we're perfectly made. God doesn't make mistakes. Many of us say that, but can we live that? Can we live in knowing that the way that we were made, whether it's dark, white, light skinned, everywhere in between, that it's not a mistake that we are who we are, that we have the voices that we have the bodies that we have. How wonderful. How wonderful it is to be perfectly human, right?